estamos aquí en At the Bottom of the Hill con Jorge Navarro de los Cuban Cowboys. Hola Jorge, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, aquí bien, cansado pero vivo y aquí. So.
Y a ver, cuéntanos, ¿qué estamos celebrando aquí? What are we celebrating here tonight?
Bueno, es the release of our new CD, Diablo Mambo. It's produced by a wonderful local and world-renowned producer, Greg Landau. And tonight is the night that we tell people in San Francisco that we loved you and we burn for you.
So tell me, what is the Cuban Cowboy?
The Cuban Cowboy is this character that I created to convey life in between dos idiomas y dos culturas. So I live in between them, I perform in between them, and the cowboy is representative of that. O sea que it's an American icon, right? That also applies south of la frontera, and that there are plenty of vaqueros and Tex-Mex that will look at this hat and say, hey, he's all right. So es una mezcla así que refleja lo que es la vida para mí como cubano, americano o un bien americanizado Cuban guy.
Y pues así como hablas de mezcla, ¿no? La música también refleja ese tipo de mezcla porque la fusión es entre surf y pues son y rock, ¿no? Y lo han descrito como la introducción de Led Zeppelin mezclado con un son cubano.
Sí, y así es porque también eso es la mezcla porque my background is a rock one. I'm primarily a rock musician y cuando me conecté con Greg, he was like, well, you're the Cuban Cowboy, so ¿dónde está lo cubano? And it was there, but he really helped bring it out. Y ahora tenemos un poquito de soca, un poquito de mambo, de rumba, de son y guajiro in with lo que se llama, I guess, post-punk rock. Y ahora es verdaderamente rock, pero a lo cubano.
Y cuéntame, ¿cómo se hizo la conexión entre Greg Landau y tú?
Yo estaba tocando en un beneficio for the Friends of the Library en the Bernal Heights branch, que lo iban a redesignar y algo así. Estaba tocando ahí y una buena amiga de Greg de muchos años que se llama Carol Steele, una conguera requete famosa aquí en el Bay Area, y ella ha tocado con Santana, con Carole King, con Tears for Fears, Wyclef Jean, de todo. Eric Clapton, this lady has done it. La primera americana y mujer que tocó con los muñequitos de Matanzas también. So she's known Greg a long time, and she played with me at this benefit and called Greg up and said, dude, there's this guy I want you to meet. She's a friend of my family's. Carol es amiga de mi suegro. Entonces that was the connection with her, and so she brought Greg because he lived up in Bernal Heights ahí, and Greg came and was like, wow, I think my dad would like you to use you for a song. His father, his name's Saul Landau, a documentarian. Entonces he brought me over to his house y empezamos a trabajar en una canción que se llama El Danzón de 90 Millas, and it's the theme song for Real Terrorists, Please Stand Up. And it's a movie about the hypocrisy in U.S.-Cuban relations, and that these five men are treated like terrorists when they were actually the Cuban Five. And so it's hypocritical for us who are, our State Department, our government has committed acts of terror and insane amounts of human rights abuses for years, and you're going to call these guys who weren't acting against our country, but they were defending themselves against the insane people of my mom's generation, the Miami Cubans, or some people would call them gusanos, but I just call them mami, papi, but so it's weird, but the film talks about them and the hypocrisy in the relations between the two islands, and so the song gets at that, but that was what brought Greg and I together.
So I didn't want to touch the political side, but now that you bring that up, I'm a little bit confused, I don't know, in some of your songs you depict or I assume it's Castro as somebody evil, the traidor, in that.
Oh, well, no, el gusano is, it's a worm, right? But it's a derogatory term for people who left the revolution and left the island, like the Miami Cubans, the so-called Miami Cubans. But if you're a gardener, a worm is actually a good thing, So the song, I'm not calling him a traidor, it's just that one doesn't know who is a brother and who is a traitor. So there's confusion because todos somos cubanos. And why do we act this way? Si todos somos cubanos, si todos estamos unidos por la cultura, por el idioma, por sangre, ¿por qué toda la división y todo lo político? Why does it have to come between us? So I break with my family, and since you took me there, I'm pro-revolution, but I'm not necessarily enamored with what came of the revolution. And I'm tired of the polemic, but, a la misma vez, I'm primarily an entertainer. and I gotta rock. And so this reflects where I'm coming from.
Is it in your past life now, the PhD professor?
Yeah, well, it's like the politics of Cuba in the U.S. and the polemic there. There's a intense polemic in bilingual education. O sea que, people, American policymakers consider bilingualism some sort of, disease.
Yeah.
Some in English is to be taught. Spanish and first cultural, English only, sink or swim. You see it reflected in our immigration policy or non-policy. You see it in the schools when kids are lost and no one is taking advantage of the enormous cultural and linguistic capital that our children and families possess. So it pissed me off as a researcher to know that my research, it wouldn't matter because that's not what's driving policy. What's driving policy are politicians and people who are very afraid of all the color that is suddenly in our so-called tree and of all the diversity that we have now. So there's a big shift going on in our country demographically and politically, and I got sick of that in bilingual ed, so I said, I'm going to turn to pop culture and I'm going to go with this character because I think that this character can do more for that issue, bilingualism, than Jorge Navarro, Dr. Jorge Navarro, teaching at the University of lo que sea.
So your character now, the Cuban cowboy, tell us more about your CD. I mean, it just came out.
So it's rocking. Greg really introduced a whole groove to it, and now there's groove where there wasn't before. There's still rock, pero es como, as he said, it's like Pérez Prado meets the Ramones, and so there's something that people can latch onto from both sides. You can dance to it and you can rock out, and it's not milquetoast, salsa music or merengue or anything like that. It's algo very único, and so we're very happy that the reception has been cool, and we were featured on NPR's Weekend Edition, and I've been just inundated with emails, and we've sold out of CDs. It's just really beautiful to see that it kind of is catching por lo menos a little fire, if not an ember or algo así. So we're very happy with the reaction so far.
So right now you told me about Jorge Navarro, and now we're getting into the Cuban cowboy. Tell me about the songs, the inspiration behind the songs. What is it, Cojones?
Cojones is about my grandfather. He came to my house to tell me not to hit my sister, and he chased me around the house telling me he was going to cut my cojones off porque los hombres no le pegan a mujeres. And so he was ironically or weirdly, he was violent about his message, and he put me on my dresser, el gavetero, and he put a knife to my throat, and he said, if you ever hit your sister again, I'm going to cut you because you're not going to be a man. If you hit your sister, you're not a man. Men who hit women lose their balls. And I said, well, if that's true, then what about my dad? Porque mi papá, el hijo de mi abuelo, abused my mom physically. And then he was like, I was 8 years old when I told him, and he just kind of freaked out, and he let me go, and he said, eso fue diferente, and he walked out of the room, and that was it. So the song is that story of that, and it addresses, something that is endemic to most culture now that the patriarchy has kind of, se encojonaron and they took everything over. It's not what it used to be, and there is a lot of, in la hispanidad se llama machismo. In the Anglo world, it's chauvinism or sexism. And so I try to get at that, with the story of how it went down in my family. Pero también at the end of the song, there are coros that remind people que, that person that you hit, male, is not just a woman or an object or your property or anything like that. They're not that at all. They're your mom. They're the reason you're here. They're your girlfriend. They're your teacher. They're your aunt. They're your guide. They're your grandmother. They're your compañera. They're your profesora. And so it's all of the songs are pulled from my family and my life experience. But and I try to there's the lyrics are, the thing that's typical across the board is that the lyrics are kind of heavy duty, but the songs are kind of catchy, so, and I do that on purpose, porque sabe, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, así es. And so, and that's part of the deal why I chose the Cuban cowboy as opposed to a doctorate or a PhD. It's easier to communicate with people through art than it is through, hey, read this and think like I tell you. So the songs, everything is there from a record deal that went south for us, and they kept promising that they were going to send us money, so checks in the mail. A song called Señor Balaban about a Cuban street character, El Caballero de París, that would always talk to my grandfather in the mornings and try to advise him on sex and women. And it's a big set of narratives, and it's cool. So
Where can I find your music? Where can we?
Bueno, en cualquier lugar, en Amazon, por el iTunes, en donde se roba o compra music online, por el internet. Pueden también comprar the CD, physical CD, que yo te lo firmo, en nuestra página de Bandcamp, que es cubancowboys.bandcamp.com. Tenemos una página en Facebook y ahí se pueden escuchar las canciones y comprar las canciones, pero por el internet.
Hoy aquí pues estuvimos con Jorge Navarro de The Cuban Cowboys y nos despedimos para KPFA, La Raza Chronicles y para Huevos TV. Huevos.
Se lo digo a Elenita, como padre a su hija. The world is full of evil, people will deceive you.